Let's expand the conversation. We're now joined by governance expert Sandile Swana. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, having announced that the president is going to try and establish a committee between the presidency and treasury to identify wasteful expenditure, how effective could such a committee be?
Oh, thank you so much. It's a bizarre committee, to be sincere, because there are, in the same way that you would have SCOPA and the way our audits actually go in terms of performance auditing across the country in the different spheres of government. So this is just not there. Provincially, you have a SCOPA, you have a municipal SCOPA. So there are all those. I have long said that a manifesto, a political manifesto, one of the documents, two documents at least that must be considered. One is those reports, the PFMA reports and the MFMA reports, so that even before you start entering any politics, you know what needs to be done, because the Auditor General has stipulated over years what must be done. Secondly, the infrastructure report card tells us exactly the state of the infrastructure where you must focus. So I don't see this, I discourage this completely.
So if one has, for instance, consider the city of Johannesburg's crumbling infrastructure, poor governance, mismanagement of resources, we know that it's all been worsened by political instability and leadership issues. I mean, what kind of focus is needed in that space if we are talking about establishing a committee that's going to identify wasteful expenditure? But of course, the issue at hand also needs to be addressed, and money is being allocated for it.
The wasteful expenditure we're talking about does not need any identifying. It's recorded.
Yeah.
The Auditor General records all the wasteful, identifies it accurately. So the question now is, every manager where the wasteful expenditure happened need to be disciplined or corrected in some way in accordance with the PFMA or the MFMA. So in the case of the city of Joburg, it will be the MFMA. In other instances where people are abusing the funds of the state, the very same MFMA does say that some of them, the money must be recovered. In other instances, the person must be criminally charged. And those activities are presently not taking place. So if you have a municipal manager and a mayor who are not taking those decisive steps that are already stipulated in the law of South Africa, then you need to remove those people on the most urgent basis and install people who are going to insist on discipline and the implementation of existing laws. We don't even need existing laws. The laws that are there need to be implemented by the incumbents in the positions. And therefore, the incumbents are the ones who are either suitable or unsuitable. Yeah. If they are found to be unsuitable, they must be removed on short notice.
When it comes to this budget speech, I mean, 1 trillion rand allocated for 3 network industries, energy, water, transport, logistics. Surely that should serve as an encouraging move. What is your take on the allocation?
The allocation, to the extent that it is narrow in its focus compared to the sectors that are out there that need attention, is good. But I do need to put two qualifiers to this statement. That if you are spending about 330 million on average per annum for the next 3 years, generally, as a general comment, you should actually be spending about 700 billion, a third, 700 billion, let me put it like that, in order to achieve the 30% of gross capital formation that is stipulated in the NDP. In other words, our investment must be 30% of GDP. This doesn't take us there, it takes us halfway. And if we stay halfway, the GDP growth rate is going to be incorrect. 2, you can assume all our infrastructure, the overall rating of our infrastructure is a D, which means that the infrastructure cannot cope with a normal load and is likely to inconvenience the users or put them in danger, and it needs prompt attention to be fixed. That's the overall rating of our infrastructure. 40% of our infrastructure needs immediate action. And now we don't know how Kotongwana is going to improve that percentage. It doesn't say in his statement.
So if this allocation takes us halfway, according to the breakdown and the ratios, at what point will we begin to measure the trickle-down effect of the investment in infrastructure? Because money is being invested.
Yeah, so, I mean, the policy of this ANC government is that they do something. They do not do what is needed. They just do something. So it's just an action that they take. So we would have needed them to tell us. And I hope that by the time the budget is adopted, the likes of Musi Maimane and Songezo Zibi will insist that there is proper measurement to say, we're going to start here and finish over there. And therefore, the remaining backlog will be so much, but otherwise we'll have covered a certain percentage. Right now, I cannot answer that question to say, this money that he says is going to spend will help us by how much.
When you talk about the adoption of the budget, just looking at or the reaction since it was delivered, we know that the DA, for one, has said that it will not support this budget. I mean, what have you made of the different arguments against the budget?
I think some of the fellows, especially the two that I have mentioned, Songezo Zibi and Musi Maimane, have made sensible inputs, and I think their approach is going to take us forward. Some of the ideas that the DA has and the practices are highly questionable. For instance, the DA has insisted that, if I hear them correctly, that Kotongwana must clarify about expropriation of land without compensation and whether the investors will be safe here. Companies like Ford have invested here, they've never been unsafe. American companies this time, German companies like Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen have been here and they've always been safe and they remain safe. So that clause, it brings into the budget very strange things from the DA. So I think the DA is likely to be isolated. And I think those people who are going to make substantive contributions, as Songezo Zibi specifically has insisted, I think they will help us. And I think the budget will be passed by a very good majority.
Very well. Thank you so much for weighing in on the discussion as we wrap up that talk with governance expert Sandile Swana, as we, of course, take a look at some aspects of the budget speech.